Ladies and gents, welcome back to another Engineers podcast. Today I'm joined by Damon Banks, engineering leader at Flatfile. Flatfile are in the game of AI-powered data migration. So really it's best way for enterprises to prepare, map, clean, transform, and validate the data that's powering your business. And they work with some awesome businesses. And today we're going to be going deep into agentic architectures, LLMs, some of the not really so hot topics at the moment in the industry. Damon, you're a legend. Thanks for coming to join us.
Yeah, thanks for the invite. Love being here. Thank you.
Pleasure. Give us a bit of insight into your background, then give us a bit of insight into Flatfile, and do a better pitch than I did.
That was great. That was a great intro. Been a software engineer professionally for about 15 years, give or take a few months there. I've been building websites for 25 years since the early 2000s, and decided to get into the startup culture about 15 years ago, and been living there ever since. And so been anywhere from like technical lead with one or two people underneath me to VP of product with several teams. Been overseeing like data engineering side of things for analytics for the company. Been part of executive teams, been part of not executive teams. Been kind of everywhere. In the startup world, you wear every hat, whenever you need to, right? I even moved to Central Europe for a time with a startup to start a branch for the company and to scale our engineering team over there. And that was about 9 months before COVID hit. And unfortunately, COVID hit, and we ended up needing to move back just due to the nature of that situation. And so, but I was successful, was able to start a branch there with a solid team that was around for several years afterwards that I managed remotely. So found myself at Flatfile about a year and a half ago, October 2023, through a connection, just kind of word of mouth. And they said, in between jobs, how about you come do some contract work for us and, cut your teeth here, and ended up loving it. And they offered me a position January of 24. And I said yes. And, the rest is history. So currently I'm AI engineer lead, heading up a couple different areas of the platform of Flatfile, specifically the extraction area and the mapping area is my focus currently. With a small team, I don't manage anybody, but work with a small team around those areas as well. So, but that's me. Yeah.
We'll go into the extraction and mapping bit later in the show. We've already planned some great bits. I think you're about to go into Flatfile. You take it away.
Yeah. Flatfile is around because data migration is a hard problem. Anybody who's ever worked with data realizes quickly that it's not as easy as downloading a CSV from one system and uploading it or importing it into the system you're trying to get into. Over decades now, the whole data migration process has seen different iterations from ETL to ELT to like scripts, just like writing SQL procedures, and obviously data warehouses are around due to, in large part of the data migration problem, just trying to figure out what do companies do with all this data and how does it become useful. But specifically where Flatfile's platform comes in, and kind of the reason why we exist is you have data from in one shape and you need to get it to a different shape, just to really simplify everything in it, and a lot of big companies still go into Excel. They open that Excel file or that CSV file in Excel, and they start renaming columns. They start, running stored the macros against different columns to format things properly and to find missing data, and then email their coworkers, or it's a very manual process still, unless and then the alternative is hiring teams of people to write Python scripts to convert the data, import the CSV, write that. Anyways, what Flatfile does very well is take that complexity and surface it into a very intuitive UI, and to where you don't need to be technical. You can be technical. We have a very robust developer community as well, and basically makes it very intuitive on how to migrate this shape of data into this shape of data. And specifically in more recent months, we've pivoted to leaning heavily on agentic AI to complete that. And so we kind of see the data migration process in steps or verticals in our platform. So we have like your extraction, which is you upload some shape of data, you upload a file, then you have prepare, and then you have mapping, then you have transform and validate, and then egress, which takes it into your new system. And so within those 4 specific verticals, we are using agentic AI to remove that cognitive load off of the individual trying to do this and placing it on the LLM to reason about different things. And so we're specifically implementing AI agents and workflows into those different verticals, which we can jump into. But that's why Flatfile exists, is to empower those enterprise data migrations in a way that is scalable and makes sense and doesn't require writing SQL and stored procedures and macros and the manual work that today that data migration is. And there we are.
Love it. Can we talk a little bit about agentic architectures? First, what do they mean to you? Secondly, walk us through that experience of implementing them into Flatfile. It's a fairly recent transition, no doubt still going through a learning period at the moment, but there'll be a lot of people listening that keep on hearing agents, agentic architectures, haven't done it. Share your experience with us.
Yeah, really well said. Like it's all new, right? Like, when we say like agentic architectures and stuff like that, like there's definitions and like helpful things, but like it's not the 25-year like clean code revolution, that like defines so much of our industry as software engineers, like this, there's not like this kind of tried and true, like proven techniques. It's just kind of like, let's throw things at the wall that people are trying in real time and see what sticks, right? And so when I think of agentic architectures, obviously, we could go into those specific definitions or whatnot, but when I think of it, I think of, well, what works for you? Like look at your specific business need and figure out how an LLM can solve that. And when I think of agentic flows, obviously, like a single call to an LLM isn't what we're talking about, right? We're talking about something that can reason and reprocess itself. And when we talk about agents, we're talking about empowering LLMs with like tools, right? And so I think part of the challenge that we experience in like this transition of using specifically the transition of like implementing agentic AI into our platform is basically every area, just because it is so new. Like it's a different way of engineering. It's a different way of thinking through how to solve a problem, because agents get it right 80, 90, sometimes 95% of the time, and when you're lucky, it's 100% of the time, like you can prompt engineer to a better place to make agents better, but it's never perfect all the time, right? It's non-deterministic. And so when you so much in software engineering, it is about determinism. Like I write this method, I create unit tests around it to make sure that it outputs what I need, exactly when I need it and how I need it. And when it comes to agentic flows and architecture and using agents in the platform, you have to work in this very non-deterministic world of like, I don't know what this output's going to be necessarily. Maybe it's structured correctly, but is it the right data that we're looking for? And I think that's probably the biggest challenge that we are encountering, and how we've solved is fairly unique, or maybe not unique, but I do like how we've approached that, which I can get into. But as far as the challenges, I think from an engineering perspective, it is a different way of thinking. It's a different way of approaching how to solve a problem, and that's multi-layered. So
No, do you want to delayer it? I am
yeah,
really
yeah.
interested in your perspective, your own unique challenges. I'd love to learn a little bit more about them and walk us through day in the life of Flatfile and Damon Squad.
Yeah, totally. I mean, most recently, I've been working on an extraction side, not necessarily mapping, but my extraction side of things, and trying to figure out what it looks like for an agent to reason about the incoming data shapes, right? Because as we know, CSVs can be very complex, or Excel spreadsheets can be extremely complex with data up here, data down here, main data here, but maybe it repeats. Like there's just many complexities, and so the way I approach that as a AI engineer versus like a software engineer is completely different. As a software engineer, you would start, getting your use cases and being very deterministic on like, how do we handle this use case? Whereas the approach with the agentic flow is, how do I prompt the LLM to know how to see these different shapes of data? One thing that we have found is that LLMs are very good at reasoning about data. Like they do really good. They write good code. They're obviously getting better and better all the time, but they're really good at handling data. They understand data context. They understand data shapes, and so my first approach here is was just to write an initial prompt to, and then feed that LLM, or that agent, different shapes of data with complexities, and figure out like, what am I missing? Like how do I get it to identify these different areas of the site or regions? I call them complexities. But like there's global metadata. There might be multiple headers, right, that need to be merged down to one. Just all these different things. And so my approach is very different as far as like, how do I even start? And it's usually just with a LLM call. I don't start writing code. I start like actually scripting out a prompt, and then I feed the prompt and the file in this case to the LLM, just to see what is the output, what am I getting, and then I actually can use that output to improve my prompt. And that's one of the great things about working with an agent, is it can actually help debug itself, right? And so the approach to software engineering fundamentally differs when you're implementing the agent to actually solve problems in the software. So, but that's just the first layer of how like you start it, and then beyond that, then you take that into your code base, would be the next step of like, now how do we get this agent into the code base? And then you do software engineering to wire up, in my use case, the file, get the data extract. Now I'm feeding that data, through code into, agentic framework that then calls the LLM, so on and so forth.
Gotcha.
So
Gotcha. I think something that you mentioned that's really interesting that I haven't really heard that many people refer to, but the cognitive offload. People talk about speed, productivity when it comes to LLMs, agents, but we've explored agents a little bit further over the last 10 minutes, and there's a lot more complexity than a language model. So, walk us through that cognitive offload and what that actually looks like in your team.
yeah, definitely. Well, in our problem space, I think we're in a good problem space where agents can really do a lot of the work that people have been doing up until now. When you think of data migration specifically, there is domain knowledge. So there's things that the agent can be trained eventually to know, but I wouldn't say that's a majority of work that happens in data migration. You have the field first name. Let's simplify it quite. You have the field incoming field first name, and you have the outgoing field last name. Or we'll make it a bit more. Let me step back. You have the incoming field address. Then you have the outgoing fields, like the destination fields being street, city, state, zip. A human easily can look at that and say, "Oh, I need to split this address field into 5 different fields so that then you do this." That doesn't take years of domain knowledge. It doesn't take years of like business knowledge to be able to assess that. That's a fairly low hanging fruit that anybody looking for that type of problem probably can assess pretty quickly. And so when I say removing cognitive overload, like offloading the cognitive load of data migration onto agents, that's at its core what I'm saying is whether it's an extract, prepare, map, or transform and validate, a lot of that information a user shouldn't have to think of that. Like that should just be a automatic assumption that the AI can make. It's like, oh, you're in mapping. We know you have address field. We see this address field isn't split out. We know the destination has street, city, state, zip. I know what to do with that. Like that's something that an agent can easily reason about. And so I would say that a large percentage of data migration that the user goes through, whether that's in Excel or writing SQL or ETL or whatever that is, can be offloaded so that the LLM can reason about that. And so a lot of that just cognitive load can come off the user, and they can move more into a validation, like a validate viewer than an actual implementer and actual actor there. So
Got you. Okay. Well, where have some challenges been? Let's bracket this up into AI as an umbrella. Or where have some challenges been over the last few months exploring this like really full on?
great question. Stepping back and looking at challenges, I think the an interesting challenge we're facing now is that like our service provider, the way we do security is through AWS Bedrock. Our agents, we run the models locally in our account through Bedrock, which is a fairly common way of doing this. Bedrock doesn't necessarily support the models that we're using in other regions around the world. And so we have several regional deployments of our platform just to keep data localized to our customers. And it's an interesting problem at this point that like what we can't do is have the EU call a US bedrock model, right? Just because that breaks our, like that kind of breaks the point of having segmented regions and data privacy issues there, crossing boundaries. So that's been an interesting challenge. And I think more like that was specific, but more broadly, like I think that infrastructure architecture, like what does this like even in running the LMs through Bedrock, we still hit quotas. We still have like throttling. There's still a whole like realm of infrastructure things that I still think we get to figure out. So it's an interesting problem that like our core provider, and we're looking to expand as well, doesn't have the newest models in different regions. And so even though we're building, we are having to limit or use lesser models for our regional deployments at this moment. And by lesser, I mean, you know what I mean by that. Just like it's not the newest, hottest one. We have to wait till they deliver that. Would be one of the challenges that we're facing. Go on.
If I just jump in, geography is quite an interesting one then. If we're talking about regional deployments, and it's kind of got my brain whirring a little bit and thinking about data ownership. That's been a really big thing over the last 12 months. Data in AI generally, I think about speed, accuracy, trust in that data, safety, or trust and safety. Let's package those together. there's quite a lot of things there. You know, when we're talking about data and when we're talking about different regions. So I can imagine that's going to continue to roll to be a challenge.
Very much so. And we're pretty, I mean, like we're huge on data security, of course, as I think any startup should be, but specifically, like we handle companies' data, which require us to be. That's it's a high focus of our time, and that's our security practice. So LMs definitely have created some complexity there for sure, but services like Bedrock or the equivalent in Azure and so on and so forth kind of create that kind of security pocket that does allow us to use these LLMs, and we're not necessarily we are not sending any sort of like PII data to public LLMs at all. So
Fine.
it's very well contained.
Good.
Yeah.
You're going to walk me through another challenge.
Oh yeah, I mean to kind of we can loop back on just the non-deterministic scope of AI, like it is getting better, like with every new release of, from Claude or OpenAI, like things are getting better, and I would say more deterministic, but the, LMs itself, if you make an LM deterministic, it kind of it mitigates the creativity, right? Like you don't want to like force it into always being deterministic, because then it can't actually do what it does well, which is reason and be creative and come up with solutions, right? And so it is getting better to where you're not like asking for it to like output 2 + 2 and it gives you 6. It will produce 4, right? Just as an example. And so I think one of the biggest challenges is when you're building a feature around the agentic flow, you're almost building 2 features, is what we found. You build the feature as if you don't have the agentic flow, because you have to empower the user to take what the agent does to 80 or 90% and get it to that 10%, get it to that 100% line, right? And so you kind of have to empower your agent to get it to where it can get, and then you have to empower your user to take it across that finish line, whether that's through a validation step or, man, I just need to add another column here, or I need to change it, something. Like you still have to give those tools to the user as if they are doing it from the 0% to the 100%. So you almost build 2 features simultaneously together that work in tandem, of course. But I think that's been a challenge. And oh shoot, the other challenge. Oh, I had a good one. Anyways, there was another one that I thought it will come back, but specifically like building the 2 features together seems it's a lot, like, yeah.
I totally bet. I wanted to understand a bit more about industry defining practices. That's something that you and I have spoken about, that we wanted to talk about today. Lay out where you think some of the industry defining practices will be. Who's setting them? Like, what are they at the moment? Where are we going in 3 to 6 months' time in terms of best practices? Because there's a lot of new stuff here that is being played around and meshed around with.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. I really do think Flatfile is like on the cutting edge of like defining how to develop, like solve real world problems with agentic flows. And that's not just a hot take because I'm here. Like I genuinely think that we are solving amazing problems using our agentic workflows and agents there. And so I and one thing that we are due as far as like industry best practices, more specifically to the development side, is we offload the reasoning to the LLM, and then we actually have it build code or scripts that then we run data through, if that makes sense, which I think is really important, because context windows, you hit those. You can't just throw a 1,000-page PDF today at an LLM and expect it to do what you need it to do. Like maybe a year from now, maybe 3 months from now, who knows? But the industry's changing so quick, But like eventually, I'm sure you can just hand these large documents that are gigabytes um, to an LLM and let it do its thing. But as of right now, there's quite the limitations of context windows as far as like prompts and stuff like that. And so what we do is we have the agent's reason, then we have it build code, and then we run the data through that code and output that code in a more deterministic manner. And that code can actually be reused. And so we don't necessarily need another agentic call to make that same decision, if that makes sense. And so a lot of our flows are, for instance, the extract. Like someone might be uploading a million row file that can't be given to an LLM to shape. And so what we do is we walk it through the complexities, and then we have it build a custom extractor for our site that then row by row at the end of the flow we feed that document into that custom extractor that was built through the LLM. And so I think as far as like creating like industry best practices and where the industry is going, and I might be off on your question, feel free to course correct if I am. Like I see that as being like a core like strategy that the industry is implementing and how they're implementing it, just due to the nature of how the context windows and the limitations on current LLMs. So, and that was pretty minute as far as like industry practices, but I do feel like we have done that well so far.
Yeah, and it just piqued my curiosity. Who defines them? Not necessarily how do you know if it's best practice? Is it a case of talking to other businesses outside of Flatfile to understand what they're doing? Because you probably hit your own context window in terms of your own team. So I'm curious as to who is defining best practices the most.
100%. I think if you, I'm going to steal a story from our VP of product, John, and the way he describes this, and I'm paraphrasing greatly, but he basically says in every like technology boom, there are a handful of winners, for lack of a better word, that do become those industry defining companies. If like the HubSpot for the marketing, like the marketing boom, a handful of years ago, to Salesforce with that platform. Then you have the cloud computing, one, and there's always these key players. You can go back farther as well, but there's a handful of companies that become those defining companies that do end up leading the industry as far as best practices go and doing it successfully. And so I don't know if we really know, like at this point, like there's definitely some key players, like there's like a lot of voices right now, and it's like it's this new technology, so everybody is heightened, like the dust is still in the air. And I do feel like there is opportunity for the startups of the world again to become that handful, that grouping of definers of industry standards over the next 12, 18 months. And I think that's going to become real clear, like post this kind of wave of agentic stuff, that we're going to see, oh yeah, they were there at the beginning, or they entered, like midway, and now they are the new Amazon or the new, like whatever, people that really become that core definer of what this is. And I think it's separate than like the open AI. It's not Claude, it's not open AI, it's not, those aren't the players. That's technology that produces the players, right? That we build against. So there are definitely those definers, of course, more of like the technology creators and definers, but not necessarily like who comes out of that is going to be an interesting scenario. So as far as like who does it, I don't think that, like, I feel like but yeah, Flatfile has an opportunity. I truly believe that we have some of the most brilliant people. Well, we have the most brilliant people I've ever worked with on our team, and we're crushing it every day. And some of the decisions and creativity that our teams have come up with, just I'm impressed with every day. And so I do think that we have some opportunity to really be a good definer of industry practices. So from engineering to hiring to, just like what does that even mean for companies in the future? I think that we have some good core concepts that I think will come out. So
Love it. I want to come back to those hiring concepts in a second. But where do you think we're going with AI in the next 3 to 6 months? Like it really is anyone's bet at the moment. But if Damon had to put some dollars on it, where do you think we're going? Where do you think some of the challenges that will spin off of that will be?
yeah, that's great. I think Sam Altman just mentioned earlier that they're working on a model to where they're highly increasing context window is kind of their next focus, is like taking that limitation off. And I think that that's going to be the next wave of things in the next 3 to 6 months that we see, is those context windows. You're going to be able to upload a gigabyte file potentially, and let it reason and be successful in that reasoning through that. And so I would say that in the next 3 to 6 months, we're going to see, and then obviously Meta with their Llama 4 context windows at 1 million tokens right now, I think, which is just unfathomable how large that is. It's impressive. So I would say that a lot of the limitations that we see today, which would be speed and context windows. Like right now you do something and it takes 7 to 15 to 30 seconds for the reasoning model to highlight. So it's you like produce something. And so you kind of go get your cup of coffee and you come back, or you refill your water and you come back. I think those two challenges are going to be mitigated shortly, would be my thought. And we're going to start seeing a faster response time and those context windows dropping off, which I think will produce new challenges in and of themselves. Because how much do you? It will create an interesting. How much can you give it, and how accurate can it be? Will be the biggest question, and we face that now within limited context windows. Like if you give it 200,000 tokens, can it accurately do its thing? Sometimes yes, most times no, I'd say. So
I was actually going to ask Flatfile the next 3 to 6 months. What are you working towards building for what you can share? Does new models, reasoning, speed, and unsure of what's being released in that period of time make it really hard to plan against the product and the roadmap? Or do you just have a very clear vision of, hey, we're building this and we know what's being built in AI is very likely going to be beneficial for us in terms of speed, reasoning, and context? We're just building it anyway. That's just going to speed us up.
Yeah, the latter there, 100%. We have a very positive outlook on like what's coming down the pipeline. It's not like a limiter for us. Like, within our 3 month field of view, this is the best choice we could make. Maybe something comes out in 3 months that's like, oh shit, let's pivot, and let's do it this way, and let's use this new model or whatever that is. But that doesn't like our 6 week or 12 week kind of roadmap is pretty well defined, and we're optimistic about the next model that comes out, or the next big thing in AI news, whatever that might be. Just because, yeah, we're going to be benefited by it. Like our company will test it, use it, implement it, and be successful with whatever that is. And so we're pretty excited about the future. And like it might not be the 6 month roadmap that maybe a more scrummy team would have, and really define, but we have our North Star, if you would. And in 3 months we'll address what's the next 3 months is, so we have a pretty positive outlook. And so I wouldn't say it's a challenge. Like, obviously it's the unknown, but it's more of a optimistic unknown of like, man, what's going to come out next, and I can't wait to get my hands on it and cut my teeth on it. So
Yeah, love it. Nice. Good. Let's go to those hiring best practices and also share a little bit about what you might be hiring for into the team for, where Flatfile is going to be in 6 months' time. Help us understand those before we wrap up.
yeah, I think hiring the AI talent is really interesting. Like you can't put like 10 years experience working with agentic LLMs, to hire a staff level engineer, and so it creates interesting complexity of like how do you address hiring? How do you like, and almost like any experience, like what we're looking for, or yeah, let me separate that. When it comes to hiring, like, you need good, solid software engineers still. Like, it's not one of those like, oh, I vibe coded, I know how to vibe code my way into trouble. um Vibe coding is great, but I don't think if I wasn't at the level of software engineering that I am at, that I would trust it at all, if that makes sense. Like, so trust that. So like we're looking for like solid engineers who have cut their teeth and have been part of startups, who would consider themselves staff or principal, and then also have dove in the deep end for the Agentic stuff and is excited for what's coming out of it, and has like used Vercel's AI SDK or Llama's SDK, like have done it themselves, like, and that kind of like, I've dove in the deep end. I don't really know where I'm coming out. I might be drowning, but this, I'm all in with this Agentic kind of like software engineering architecture solutions that we're pushing. And also, I'm a quality AF engineer, is kind of our hiring strategy at this point. Yeah,
The principles haven't really changed, in all honesty. The technology's changed. The principles haven't really, from a long time ago, 5, 10 years ago, longer, very likely. But that's how long I've been in the game, and the principles haven't really changed. Very good approach, or modern approach to different patterns, testing, strategies, technologies will come and go.
100%. I mean, quality of character. There's not room for egos. Like, I've worked, the teams I work with now are just, I'm floored every day, humbled every day to work with them and stuff. And there's just no room for egos there, and so just like quality of character, but also some incredible minds, and people who just are impressive with their resume, but also just their creative thinking skills and how they implement things. Yeah, it doesn't change, right? Like, that's who you want to hire, and that's the team we've been able to put together. And then also, have you done AI work? What AI work have you done? That's great. We'll hire you on, kind of thought. So, and also, I mean, there's a whole we are building custom ML models as well, and so there's a drive to get the ML engineers, like ML engineers, onto our team to create custom models and stuff. Not like agentic LLM models, but custom models to speed up the process. So
I'm with you. I hear machine learning engineers, staff, principal people, any certain locations.
no, Flatfile's 100% distributed. We don't have any headquarters. We don't have an office anywhere. We kind of pride ourselves of just like we're a fully remote company, and thriving thereof. So
Love it. If you're an engineer at a senior level, machine learning engineer, clearly working with some game changing people in hopefully a category defining business, Damon likes to think so, and hopefully so, you should definitely check these guys and girls out. Damon, I want to say a massive thanks. You've been a legend. I know we've both been pumped for this
yeah,
over
this
the
is
last
great.
couple of months. So I'm finally pleased to make it happen. It's exciting to hear about what Flatfile are doing at the front of the game. Like I said, hopefully category defining. We've got to wait and see. And again, you've been a legend.
Yeah, appreciate you, Elliot. Thank you so much.
Absolute pleasure. And for everyone listening, go and check out Flatfile. Drop Damon a DM by all means. Reach out to their recruitment team. But likes, shares, subscribership, all of that good stuff is massively important to us and keeps this little ecosystem going around. So please do it. And thanks a lot.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Hey guys, thanks for watching this episode. Massively appreciate you listening and checking in with us. If you want to find out more about us and what we're doing, please check us out on social media. What we're trying to do at Engineers is build a community to drive knowledge sharing and experiences. On Twitter, we can be found Engineers.io. It's no_. We've also got a website which is engineers.io. These links will all be posted in the description. Any feedback and comments are massively appreciated. We're always looking to improve on where we can. Thanks, guys.